Okay, now that we've got our basic death sequence out of the way, why don't we add a little bit of effect to this? Now, I'm not an effects guy. I should just caution you that right now. We have an entire course, maybe even two at last count, on how to do special effects. We have a lighting course, we have special effects classes, we have rigging classes, we have all these specialties. Right now you are in the programming specialty, and so hopefully it doesn't come as a great surprise that I am not a dedicated effects guy. I pull off effects either by tweaking the ones that are already in here, or I go to the Unity asset store and get them when I need them. So that is a good enough strategy for me, and that's my disclaimer on effects. So we're going to use some effects that are already in Unity. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that the effects package, or the particles package rather, has already been imported. So go to Assets, let's import a package, and let's import particle systems. Now in my case I've already done this, so it's going to tell me I don't have anything to import, but you probably will, so go ahead and import all of them. And when you're done, you should have a list of effects underneath your assets, under standard assets, and then particle systems, and then you want to go into prefabs. So we're going to use two of these. We're going to need an explosion, and there's two versions of it. There's an explosion and an explosion mobile. The mobile versions are always more resource, or I guess I should say less resource intensive. They've been optimized so that they look good on a mobile platform. And then the other one is designed for just PC based gaming platforms. And so they're not necessarily optimized for lower end graphics cards and lower end processors. So choose accordingly. And we have a couple in here that we're going to use. We can use smoke, we can use fire, we can use explosion. I'm just going to stick with two. It may be overkill to do three, but we'll stick with two. And so how do we make these work? Well, to make these work, really all you have to do is drag them into your scene like anything else. So if we have, there is smoke. I'm blind, I'm just not seeing it. Smoke. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to drag that and drop it into my scene. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing for explosion. And in this case, there's a nice preview, so I can actually see what it's going to look like. So if I flip it around to the front and bring it into view, that's a nice little smoky hole. And if I wanted to, I could mess around with the parameters over here and get it to be denser or a different color or whatever. I could give it a red tint, whatever you'd like to do to it. I'm going to make it black. And so all of that, again, is really the purview of a different course. And I don't claim to be an expert in this. Like I said, usually what I do is I just get in here and fiddle around with it until it looks right. And to be honest with you, I think that's what most people do anyway. There are a number of people who have spent time really getting to know this interface and really understanding the outs of it. That ain't me. I know the coding part, so I'll stick to what I'm good at and just fiddle around with this stuff, and we'll get it working. And then, like usual, you can come in here and get somebody who's really good at this, or become really good at this yourself. That should probably be the ultimate goal, right? All right, so that's what smoke looks like. The explosion, we'll drag it and drop it out there. And when we run it, that doesn't have a preview. You actually have to run it to see that one. We'll watch it. Boom. Not bad. We'll watch it again because it goes kind of fast. Okay, and you can see what we're kind of probably going to do, right? We're going to put the explosion and the smoke on top of each other because it takes a second for the smoke to warm up, which is actually realistic, right? It should explode and then start smoking, and so that works well for us. All right, so I'm going to take these out of my scene, just get rid of them, and all I really need to make this work is a slot in our warrior. So let's switch back over to our warrior controller script, and let's add some slots for this. Let's say public game object, and we'll call it smoke prefab, and we'll do one for explosion prefab. Perfect. Now there is going to be a modification we're going to make this work and to have it not be totally crazy. But let's go down to the bottom and do the obvious addition of code down here where we have this to-do item. And so we'll get rid of our to-do item since we're about to do it. And we're just going to instantiate these. So I'll instantiate, we've done this before with our shot code. In our shot code, you can see up there on line 58, we're assigning it to a variable. We don't need to do that this time. We're not going to do anything to it. So before we assigned it to a variable so that on line 59, we could assign a velocity to it. Well, we're not going to manipulate it. We're just going to turn it on and then basically get rid of it. So what we'll do is we'll instantiate. We need the object in question, which in this case is going to be the explosion prefab. And we need a place for it. And for this one to work right, you really want this option number 4, which is usually, I think, the one that we use anyway. You want the original, which we've got, and then a vector3 position, which in this case is just going to be transform.position, because we want the explosion to appear in the same location as our enemy Scorpion. So we'll say transform.position, and that's our vector3. And then the last thing it wants is a quaternion. And when in doubt, you just supply quaternion.identity, which is a 0 rotation, and that should look just fine. We'll take this piece of code, we'll duplicate it. Whoops, not sure what happened there. There we go. Same thing, except for the smoke. And now we're good, except for one major faux pas, which I noticed earlier and didn't say anything about because that's not what we're working on. Die, how is that called? So I'm going to click on die, I'm going to press F12, and it's going to take me to, actually no, it's going to take me right here. I was thinking the other way around, find usages. And it's going to take me to where it's used, which is right here, which is on update. Well, the problem with this is as soon as the guy is dead, this is going to fire every time, right? This is not really what we want. So remember earlier when we were trying to figure out, and I was trying to decide if we should go based on a signal or if we could do this observable pattern thing and we could observe. We went with observation. Now the dark side of that decision is rearing its ugly head. And so we don't have a state in here that's going to help us. So we're going to have to make one. It's going to be a little ugly, but it's going to work. And so what I want to keep driving you towards is keep making improvements that make the game run. You always want to have something that runs. You can always go back and refactor it and make it nicer later. So this is going to be one of those ugly moments where we put something in here that we're probably not totally proud of, but we can go back and fix this sort of thing later. So we're going to say bool is dead. Now I hate this because we already have a state is dead, but it's not helping us. Because here we've got is dead. All that's telling us is that the hit point system thinks it's dead. We need a better way to call die. But for now, it's in update. So we're going to have to do not is dead over here and come up with something better later on. Right? And of course, to make that work, it's probably best if we initialize it to false. All right, and actually, let me think about this. Is dead is, when is dead is true is what we're after, right? So let's fix that. Okay, so is dead is true. We'll set it. Nope, right, I had it the first time. It should be like this. So there should be a not symbol there. And this is where we're going to fix it. So it's a little weird, but bear with me. It's basically a gate. So we're going to say is dead is true here. And so that will limit it from coming back through here a second time if I've done this right. And it will be pretty obvious if I've done it wrong, because we're going to see this happen over and over again, and instantiating particle effects on top of each other is going to be a rather dramatic visual effect. And it'll also slow our game to a crawl, so if I've made this kind of mistake, it will become obvious pretty quickly. All right, so let's get in here and see if it works. And I'll go ahead and aim. And here he is. And I mentioned earlier he's walking through that mountain a little bit there, so we probably want to fix that. Boom. Got him. He's dead. But I don't see... Oh, did we not set our... We didn't set our thing, did we? Shame on me. We forgot to set our prefabs. Okay, so click on our warrior. Let's find our prefabs. I happen to have my explosion right here. I'm just going to drag the explosion, put the explosion prefab there, put smoke back up. I'm just literally using the assets right out of Unity without doing anything to them. Okay, now we're ready. Let's try that again. Pardon me, here he comes. Wait till he's nice and lined up. Boom. And there's his smoking remains. And then we need to find a way to get rid of him once he's dead. But you'll notice that the explosion takes care of itself. Actually, no, it doesn't. It's right there. So we're going to have to... Oh, there it goes. So the smoke takes care of itself. I don't think the explosion does. So we'll need to make sure that we take care of those as well. So we need our dead body to disappear, and we also need our explosion to disappear. And apparently the smoke takes care of itself. Now the smoke takes care of itself. It looked like about 5 seconds to me. So the cheap and easy way to do this, and you know I'm all about the cheap and easy, to do a destroy object on these things 5 seconds after they're created. So we've instantiated smoke, which take care of itself. We've instantiated explosion, which doesn't. So now we're going to need to actually catalog this. So we're going to need var explosion equals, and then we need to add as game object onto the end of this so that we actually get a type that we can work with. And then we need explosion dot, actually no, we don't. We need destroy explosion, and we want a 5-second delay. And in this case it's float t, so we want 5.0f will give us 5 seconds. And why don't we do the exact same thing? Whoops. Apparently I didn't hit Control-C. With our warrior. So we'll destroy the explosion, we'll destroy the warrior game object. And let's see if that works. It would probably be better to do something cool like fade him out or flash him before he goes away. But let's just see if this part works. Boom. He falls and dies. There's smoke, and he disappears. Probably sooner than need be. Maybe we want to up that number a little bit, but effectively the mechanic works. Okay, we could definitely get rid of the explosion, because as soon as it's done, then it's done. We don't need that. But that's probably going to be a little better. Boom. Not bad. All right. Since we're talking about particles, why don't we see if we can do something about the silly green ball? So since we've got particles, let's turn this off and see if there's anything in here that we might be able to use. So flare might be a possibility. Let's see what flare is about. I honestly don't know what it is, so let's drag it out and look at it. It does have a preview. All right. That's not a bad piece. That's not a bad looking piece of artillery. It's going to shoot sparks out. That might make for a good weapon. We might need to change the color a little bit, though, to make it a little more convincing. Maybe a nice blue. And clearly that's not what I'm looking for. As I mentioned, not a specialist with the particles. So if we fiddle around with this long enough, we'll probably be able to figure out what we need to change in order to change the color. And fiddle around it until we get something that looks good. But I'm just going to use this as is, since I haven't cracked the code. So let me get rid of it. I dragged it in just to see what it was. Let me get rid of it. And let's change our sci-fi tower here for a minute. And right now our shot prefab is bullet. Maybe we should make a different bullet. So let's put this back out here. Let's do, what was it, flare? I might want to go with flare mobile since I'm going to be shooting a lot of them, but we'll put flare up there. And I'll close up the particle system and let me add to this our bullet controller script. And I think that's what we're going to use. So let's try better bullet for the name, and let's make it into a prefab, and let's see if that looks any better. So let's go into our sci-fi tower, find our shot prefab, let's replace it with a better bullet. And let's see how that looks. Oop, not good. It's kind of cool though. Yeah, they're not moving. They're just hanging out. So they instantiate, but they don't go anywhere. So that's not what I was expecting. Let's see. Maybe it's a rotation problem. Bullet controller. Oh, it doesn't have all the stuff on it, does it? So it's going to need, it does not have a, and there's probably an, yeah, there's an error in here, see? You're missing a component. So this goes back to something I was talking about earlier where you can force things to have components on them. So bullet controller really requires you to have a rigid body. So why don't we go ahead and make that true? So let's call this require component type of rigid body. And that will force us to have a rigid body on there. So now if we go back over here and look at our better bullet prefab, it doesn't have one, so it doesn't retroactively add them. So let's add rigid body to it so that it can fly. And is there anything else that we need? Let's go look. Oh, we probably need a collider, don't we? Let's go see what we did on the other bullet. The other bullet has a sphere collider on it. So this one should too. And that should be okay. Now let me get rid of the one that's in here because we don't need that. And let's see if that helps. Much better. Okay, so that's not super awesome, but it's better than a sphere, right? So I think at this point, you can fiddle around with the particle system and get it to look a lot better. And then, of course, you could do the same thing with the other guy and probably give him a different color shot, right? And this is actually shaping up to be a pretty nice looking tower defense game.